Hello and welcome to 100 Yards of Football, Sports Talk Radio. I'm your producer, Jeremiah Long, and joining me is our host, Logan Landers. How's it going, Logan?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jeremiah. It's finally fall. It's football season. That's how I know it's football season. That winter the cold front comes in. Time to get a few jackets on, like you see here. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready to talk about this game.
Oh, I'm always ready for it. Yeah, and today we are bringing you a preview of the Georgia Bulldogs versus the Florida Gators. The SEC will never be the same. We've got two teams who are struggling for dominance somewhat in different ways, though. Georgia just wants to get to the very top rung. They want to try to hang with Alabama. I'm not saying that they're not a great team and that they can't hang with Alabama, but they weren't able to close the gap and finally overcome Alabama when they faced them. So they're still in the running to try to become that very top tier of teams. Florida, on the other hand, has had their own share of problems. I don't know if I necessarily call this a rebuilding year, but it is a year that they are still trying to get back to that upper echelon level in a very similar way that when I talk about Tennessee that they're trying to do. They have this former glory that's not too far off. Everybody can still remember it. There's still plenty of people in the coaching staff and the athletic department that remember when Florida was considered one of the top tier teams. And they're still a great team and doing pretty well, but they've had some interesting turns in this season. So, Mr. Logan Landers, I just want to ask you to break down Florida versus Georgia and tell us what do we have to look for in this game.
We have a heck of a game lined up for this Saturday, Jeremiah. It's going to be an SEC showdown, like you said, between two teams who are battling for who's going to stay in the top 10 in terms of the polls. So, as we know, Georgia is the number 5 seed in the nation, and Florida is number 8. So we have a very highly contested battle here. Whoever wins this game will move up a few slots, and whoever loses it will more than likely fall out of the top 10 or right near it. So, look, just starting things off, I'm going to say this. If I'm Georgia, I'm worried. And I say this only because they played against Kentucky last week, who we've talked to quite a good amount of bit on the show here, and how we said last week that game against Kentucky, it won't be easy. It should have been for Georgia since they're a number 5 team, but they only won by a score of 14-3. And being the number 5 team in the country against a team who's not ranked, I'm not saying Kentucky's a bad opponent or anything, but especially against an unranked kind of a lower tier SEC team, you expect them to kind of blow them out, not to only win, by 11 points. I partially have to just say, the Stetson Bennett experiment's kind of starting to wear off a little bit. They've had a few issues with him. He threw 2 interceptions this past Saturday, only threw the ball 19 times. So they're kind of starting to wane off of that a little bit and more kind of rely on that stacked defense, which that's the only thing that's kind of keeping them alive, in my opinion. And their running game's also starting to they're trying to get some steam on that end as well. Zamir White had 26 carries for 136 yards this past week with a touchdown. He did pretty well. James Cook, 6 carries for 39 yards. And then Kendall Milton, 8 carries for 31 yards. So those guys, they did a pretty solid job. 43 total carries the entire game for 215 yards and a touchdown. Stetson Bennett also ran the ball for a touchdown as well, so that's how they got their 14 points on the day. And then since they didn't throw the ball too much, their receiving core was kind of lackluster and wasn't really even there against Kentucky. James Cook had 4 catches for 62 yards. Darnell Washington had a catch. Karis Jackson had 3 catches for 25, which I thought they would really kind of go to him more since he's looking like their front runner for the best wide receiver on that team since George Pickens did not play this past game. And then Jermaine Burton had a catch as well. So all the receivers in total had 9 catches for 131 yards, no touchdowns. So you'd really like to kind of see that rush or the offense trying to step up, especially on the passing side of the ball. Only throwing the ball 13 times an entire game, especially against Kentucky, where you could really try some new plays. Like I said, this should have been a game where Georgia should have won 41-3, not 14. On the defensive side of the ball, which is really where their bread and butter is and how they're honestly staying in these games and how they're able to get these close wins. They had 4 sacks on the day, and so that's team effort there. Anytime you can pressure the quarterback, that's always going to help you get wins. Leading the team with tackles, Nakobe Dean, 14. He's looked like a stud this year. And Richard LeCount had 13 total tackles as well. So those guys are doing very solid. Also with LeCount, he had 3 passes defended also. So very solid game out of him. No interceptions for the Bulldogs either. So for that offense, they really got to step things up if they want to beat Florida. And their defense has been very solid this season. I've loved watching their great defense, especially on their running defense, because they proved that they're one of the top defenses in the country, which is, look, they always say defense wins championships, but you got to have a better offense than this. You got to be able to score more than 14 points against Kentucky, who we saw that, they haven't had the best offensive numbers this year. They're more of a rushing team. They ran the ball 39 times against Georgia for 138 yards. Chris Rodriguez had 108 of those, and then Joey Gatewood had 23. So like we said, just talking a little bit about Kentucky real quick in that game, Gatewood got the start, who we talked about a while ago on this program, 15 of 25 with 91 yards. Look, Kentucky's just not a throwing team. They're not going to be able to chuck the ball all around. They're more of a running team, and if that's if it's not working for them, they're not going to get the wins. And they needed to have a really big breakout performance. They need to get turnovers against Georgia to get these wins and everything like that, and that just wasn't able to happen. They did have 2 interceptions. They were not able to capitalize on those. Phil Hoskins and Kelvin Joseph got those picks against Bennett, but you got to be able to turn those turnovers into points. The boy Timothy Nelson says Georgia owns Florida. Yeah, in the past, all time, yes, they do. But I don't know. If I'm a Georgia fan, I'm not feeling that confident heading into this game. Like I said, Timothy, Georgia does lead the series 52-43 all time. So there is that hope there that Georgia can pull it out against Florida. But let's see what the Gators have been cooking up this season. They've been, like I said, they've been having their own struggles as well. But they have a very solid quarterback with Kyle Trask, who we did a profile on a while ago. And, man, he's had a tremendous season for the Gators. He's looked like an absolute front runner for a potentially Heisman-winning season, kind of a sleeper pick, I believe. But so far in this year, 18 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, and a 68% completion percentage. So he's been their absolute stud on offense. He's really shown out and really kind of proved his potential because coming into the season, you saw, this past year, he's like, okay, he has some room that he could look pretty good. But this year, he's really kind of shown to the world, especially in the SEC, that this guy is no joke and that he can hang with the best quarterbacks in that conference. So against their game versus the Missouri Tigers, the Gators dominated. They were the number 10 ranked team at the time, and they were able to move up 2 spots after this win. They won by a score of 41-17. That's what you like to see out of a top 10 team. You like to see them blow out teams that aren't on thetheir level. Florida was able to do that, and Georgia, frankly, wasn't. Missouri goes to 2-3 on the year, and Florida is now it looks like 3-1 or 4-1. So they have had, like I said, they had that one loss, but other than that, they've looked very solid. Kyle Trask, amazing performance, 345 yards, 4 touchdowns and 1 interception, 21-36 on the day. So he's just been helping them out any way he could. And they had a pretty good game rushing as well as a team. This was a team effort by them. 169 yards on 35 rushes. Kyle Trask led the way in that as well with 47 total yards. Damian Pierce with 39 yards on 9 carries. And then Iverson Clement right behind him with 29 yards. For the receiving end, I really like Kyle Pitts. He's looked very good this year. For the game against Missouri, he was able to get 5 catches for 81 yards. So he looked very solid. On the season so far, he's got 335 total yards on 22 catches. So he's been looking very good for the Gators. Jacob Copeland as well, 67 yards. And then also Kadarius Toney had 2 touchdowns on the day, and Trevon Grimes had another touchdown for the Gators. But what I really liked about this game for Florida and what really kind of, for me, helped get this win is how they were able to produce turnovers. They were able to get fumbles and sacks left and right for this team. So it was very impressive how they were able to – it was more of a team effort for them because as we saw with Georgia, 1 or 2 guys kind of stood out on defensive side in terms of who got the most tackles, who got interceptions, stuff like that. But for Florida, all the numbers here that I'm looking at look pretty similar and very consistent. There's a big bunch of people who had anywhere from 4 to 6 total tackles. Jeremiah Moon had 1 sack, so he was doing very solid. They had 3 sacks on the day. Jalen Lee also had a sack, and Tadarius Slayton had a sack as well. So that defense for Florida really helped them out. Like I said, Missouri did score 17, but whenever you score 41, you can afford for the other team to kind of score a couple more points. They didn't have any picks on the day, but they were able to limit the Missouri offense on in terms of their receivers. So the receivers only had 208 yards. Looks like Kiki Chisholm has 68, leading the way. So they were able to limit them on both the offensive side for either rushing or for the wide receivers. Leading the way for the Missouri rushing was Larry Roundtree, the third. He had only 36 yards. So that Florida defense was able to step up and really help out against this Missouri team. They were able to get to the Missouri quarterback, Connor Baslick, who only threw for 26 of 40, 208 yards, no interceptions, and no picks. So they were able to really kind of get to him and make him feel uneasy. But other than that, Florida has looked very solid this year. And if I'm a Gators fan, I'm feeling very confident heading into this game against the Bulldogs on Saturday because I'm going to throw it out there, Jeremiah, even though Georgia is our hometown team and that we do always want them to be solid, they are not looking very solid this year. If they were not ranked, if they were not ranked like top 5, top 10 like they were in the preseason, let's be honest, they're not looking like a top 5 team at the moment. They're really not.
So you're saying there's the potential for the upset?
I think so, yeah. I think there is, just because we've seen this Georgia team. We've covered them these past couple of weeks. And look, it's not been pretty. It is not. They got handed to them by Alabama, which is their big test. We said that if they were able to beat Alabama, that we'd be able to start taking them more serious as a contender. Right. And then it didn't help that this past week, coming off that loss, they had a pretty much an easy win guaranteed with Kentucky. Right. And they weren't able to score, they weren't even able to get 3 touchdowns on the day.
That's right.
Now, my thing is that they got to do something with their quarterback situation because Stetson Bennett, he did have a nice, couple of games, but it's starting to kind of fade away now. All the magic's starting to kind of come out. You don't know what's going on with Dwan Mathis. They haven't given him a shot in weeks. And we don't know what's going on with JT Daniels either. We don't know how big his injury was because me and you were talking about it, back when we did that profile on Daniels, that this guy was a stud at USC, 5-star recruit, and that he'd be a perfect fit for this Georgia offense. But the main key that we said about JT Daniels is that how is that injury going to affect him? And as we see, we're a couple weeks into the season, and there's been no word out of him saying if he's going to play, when he's even going to be active. So they got to keep going with this Stetson Bennett train for at least we'll see how long. But if he has another bad game, they might throw Dwan Mathis back in there. I've heard some rumors that Mathis might be potentially going into the transfer portal. So we'll have to see if that ever comes to fruition or not. But this Georgia quarterback room needs to kind of get something figured out because it's not working. And their rushing game is starting to improve. Zamir White's having a good season. And their receivers are very talented. And their defense is – I love their defense. Their defense is top 5 in the country. Mm-hmm. I will say that. But their offense is lacking severely. So for me, I'm going to give a key to victory. For Georgia, if you want to win, you got to be able to get some more points on the board. And you got to be able to stop Kyle Trask. You got to be able to pressure him. Like I say, you got those 4 sacks, I believe, against Kentucky. You got to get at least that many to get the Trask, get that win. You got to get your offense going, especially on the receiving end, your quarterback play. Zamir White's going to have a great game, I think. If he gets for over 200 yards, I think that Georgia could get a win. And if you're Florida, you're going for the upset here, but you're feeling confident going into it. You have a chip on your shoulder to beat Georgia just because it's like, man, this is Georgia. We always play against them. They got the all-time record against us, and it's always a good game between these two. And for Florida, you're really trying to assert your dominance, like you said in the beginning, Jeremiah, that they're wanting to prove to the world and to the SEC that they are for real this year, and they're going to try and make Georgia look like the pretenders, and they're going to be like, look, you guys should have been focusing on us this year and not the Bulldogs. So if you're Florida, Kyle Trask got to have another great game, which I think he will. If he's able to pick apart that Georgia defense, then I could see Florida getting this upset, and it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Oof, man, that would be amazing. Again, after the way that we saw pretty much every team play against Kentucky, just to be honest. I mean, Kentucky has been no joke this year, and they really want to get some points on the board, and they want to come into next season thought of as a team that can really compete. So shout out to them. That being said, they held Georgia to those shouldn't be their scores. That is not a normal score for an SEC football game of any type. No. So when you see that, you're like, okay, so if Georgia can't score on Florida, but Florida finds that angle and is able to score on them, will they be able to hold them back if the barrier really gets broken? Like if Florida is up by 2 possessions, can Georgia actually make it back from that? We don't really know.
That's just tough because, like you said, if they get like a 2-score lead, let's just say that, or let's just say Florida's up like 14-0 during this game. Do you trust that Georgia to get those 14 points back? Only because that's how many they got against Kentucky, which, like you said, their record doesn't reflect how good they've been this year. I will say that. It's just, if they were in any other conference, they'd be a lot better in terms of their record. But it's the SEC. That's just the hand you're dealt with. But if Florida is able to get a 2-possession lead, do you really trust that Georgia offense, they've struggled this year, to get that back and to get a lead also? To me, they got to make it a defensive side of the game ball. They got to be able to get to the quarterback. They got to get some turnovers. Well, if they get some turnovers, if Georgia does, I'd get a little bit more faith in them. But I don't trust that offense. It's been shaky the whole year.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, NCAA football will continue this Saturday, November the 7th at 3:30 p.m. It's going to be Florida at Georgia, so we're all really looking forward to that. And for the team here at 100 Yards of Football Sports Talk Radio, I'm the producer, Jeremiah Long, and you've been joined with our host with the most that brings you the best breakdowns in the industry, our sportscaster extraordinaire, Mr. Logan Landers. Do you have any final thoughts?
This is going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to it. I want to see Georgia come out and show something we haven't seen this year. I want to see that offense firing on all guns. And for Florida, I want to see an upset. I'm waiting to see a big upset this game, man. I could see it happening. A lot of people are starting to get on Georgia's coaches now. That hot seat's getting a little bit warmer. So we'll have to see if Florida can get that win. We'll have to see what's going to come out of that. But if I had to give a final prediction for this, I'm gonna go with the upset, Jeremiah. I got Florida by 1 touchdown.
Well, I'm not going to give a final prediction for this one because in this particular season, I have just not even been close, to be honest. There's just too many things up in the air, too many different factors going on, external factors going on. So while I won't give a final score, I will say that I'm extremely proud of all of the conference that have been playing. I'm extremely excited to see the players able to get out there to have their seasons. I mean, these are college kids above and beyond anything else. They're trying to get their football seasons in there, and time passes. You know, I mean, a year from now, we're going to be wondering what happened. And we're going to be doing a postmortem on this very interesting season. And we're going to be looking to see who was able to really capitalize and who was able to still do something and who fell kind of by the wayside or who wasn't fully engaged with it. And that's not just talking about the players. We're also talking about staffs. I've heard a statistic saying that 40% of the coaches that should be fired this year for performance won't even be touched because that's just not on the table to think about switching your coaching staff during a season like this. So we're going to see a lot of big changes in the next couple years. But for this season, let's just keep it tight. Let's play some football. Let's do the best we can, and let's see how this thing turns out. So for all of us here at 100 Yards of Football, make sure you put in the comments what you think is going to happen. And please let us know what else you'd like us to cover, including history events, player interviews, and even coaches interviews. So, again, this is Jeremiah Long, the producer, with our host, Logan Landers, and we'll see you just a few minutes on our next